I wanted to see if it was possible to run any Windows programs on a Mac and how. Back in March, I came across this app called Crossover. It's supposed to let Macs run Windows programs, so I wanted to test that out and see how this actually works. The laptop that I'm using for all of these games that you're going to see me test is the MacBook Pro 16-inch 2021 with the Apple M1 Pro, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a 1 terabyte SSD. This is pretty close to the base model. I believe it is one spec up from the base model. Grand Theft Auto 5 runs surprisingly well, but it still has some lag spikes on my MacBook Pro. I'm not sure what causes this, but it just seems to have some pretty major lag spikes, and one notable thing is that on Grand Theft Auto Online, the game would constantly crash every 5 or 10 minutes, and I couldn't figure out why, and I honestly don't want to put that much time into figuring out why, but it would just crash pretty frequently for whatever reason. A lot of games like BeamNG.Drive will install just fine, but then they won't launch or they'll have issues when launching. As you see here, I tried multiple different things to try to get it to run, but in the end it didn't want to run. I even tried opening the game in safe mode, but nothing happened. It just seems that some games and some programs just have some issues, and they can only run on native hardware on the native OS, which in this case would be Windows. And since I have no interest in owning a Windows PC, I really don't want to buy one just to use a few programs and a few games, but I think that's probably what I'm going to have to do in the end. One interesting note is that I had this game running back in May, but for whatever reason, it no longer runs. The only thing I can assume is that the game had an update sometime during May and now, and it doesn't work anymore due to that. And also, a lot of modern games and pretty much anything Call of Duty just won't run at all. I've tried this before, and it just seems like the anti-cheats and all of the new game engines, I guess, don't work correctly. I couldn't explain this to you. I'm not a game developer, and I don't know anything about developing games. So if you want more info on that, go find a game developer, I guess. I don't know. I use Logitech Harmony TV remotes, and these need to be programmed with an older computer. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the Logitech Harmony program to even install, and I'm sure even if I did get it to install, it would have a lot of issues connecting with the USB interface, and it would not be able to actually program the remote. Back when we had Intel Macs, we could just use Boot Camp Assistant to run Windows natively on a Mac. When Apple switched away from Intel to Apple Silicon processors, this just kind of disappeared, and eventually the app was removed from macOS on Apple Silicon Macs. From what I can tell, Apple really doesn't care whether or not Microsoft allows them to put Windows on the new Apple Silicon ARM Macs. Apple said it's up to Microsoft whether or not Boot Camp comes to Apple Silicon. And I guess that Microsoft just doesn't care, or they're just busy with their own stuff, because there's no Boot Camp Assistant 2 years into M1 Max being out. I wouldn't blame Apple as much as I would blame Microsoft. And I'm not exactly sure how this works with Crossover. I would not be the right person to ask, but I'm sure there's a lot of videos on the internet explaining how this works that you can find. With all of that said, the last thing I have to say is that Crossover is not really a suitable alternative to a Windows computer. And if you need a Windows computer, it would probably just be way easier and the best option to just buy one of those Windows computers instead of relying on Crossover. As much as I do not like Windows, that seems to be the best option. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.